Hello and welcome to the Divorce Advocate, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval. I'm your host. In our episode today, we are going to be talking about parental alienation. If you don't know what parental alienation is, thank God. It is a terrible, terrible thing that I have had a ton of dads connecting with me about and that have come up in our group meetings as well as individual coaching sessions. Today, we're going to talk about what it is and how you can fight back against it. But before we get into it, again, the divorce quiz is up at the divorceadvocate.com. This is a super tool to allow you to gauge where you're at in your divorce process compared to others who have gone through it. It'll take you about 10 minutes. It'll give you some immediate results to kind of gauge where you're at in 5 different categories. And if you'd like, then you have a free opportunity to sit down with me and interpret those results, or just talk about whatever else you might have going on in your divorce. Check it out at thedivorceadvocate.com under the divorce quiz tab, or you can go to it directly at thedivorcequiz.com. Okay, parental alienation. So let's start out briefly with defining what parental alienation is for those of you that are not familiar. Parental alienation is a term used to describe a process by which one parent tries to cause the child to reject, fear, or avoid contact with the other person. Now, there was a psychiatrist called Richard Gardner who in 1985 coined this term, and he described it as a disturbance in which children are obsessed with deprecation and criticism of a parent, denigration that is unjustified and or exaggerated because of one parent's conscious, subconscious, or unconscious behaviors that affect the child's perception. Now, I think that's a good point to make here is that sometimes it is conscious, sometimes it is subconscious, and sometimes it is unconscious, where I find that it is increasingly or incredibly troublesome is when this is a conscious effort by one parent to influence one or more of the children in this way. And this is where it becomes insidious. And I've had so many men that are challenged recently with having a relationship with their kids or just don't have one at all because of the influence. And so we're going to talk a little bit more here ongoing about what you need to do in order to mitigate this, because it's incredibly detrimental to the children, but in general to the family, because as we've talked about lots and lots of times on this show, that one of the biggest and greatest indicators of children's success in adult life is that they have a father that is involved in their lives. So when this kind of activity of parental alienation happens and they don't have a relationship with their father, it is detrimental to the children ongoing. So like I said, this is not a medical term, but you might also hear it referred to as gatekeeping or coaching. And the causes are sometimes, these cases are oftentimes very difficult to identify or to state in the court or to prove in court, because number one, it's very difficult. It's difficult to talk about and talk about what the different ways in which this happens. It can also be difficult to disprove if you're on the other end of the spectrum. And even if it's proven, it's difficult to find a solution that fixes the problem. And we'll get into that just a little bit later. So let's address if parental alienation is happening in your life or in your case or with your co-parenting. So firstly, let's define the difference between the types of alienating or gatekeeping behavior. So this is going to be just some signs that that this might be happening with your children and in your case. And at the very basic level, there may be some justified or there may be some justified gatekeeping, right? And so what this means is that a parent might be limiting the exposure to one of the parents in an effort to keep them safe from a parent that may be abusive. So when we talk about gatekeeping, that might look like just reducing the time or attempting to keep a safe just a safe distance for the children because the other parent might be mentally, emotionally, or physically abusive. And so we're not talking about that necessarily in this case. What I really want to address and talk about is the unjustified gatekeeping, which what most people would align with calling parental alienation. And this is when the other parent acts in such a way to cause the child to dislike or become fearful of the other parent, even though the other parent has not done anything to cause that reaction in the child. Even if a party engages in justified gatekeeping, there is a possibility that the other parent will claim the protective behaviors are unjustified and thus are attempts to alienate the child from the other parent. So here's probably the number one thing I want to say about this is that if you suspect that there is parental alienation going on in your life or in your case, it is absolutely critical to act immediately in order to counteract the narrative about what's going on. Because if you start to become labeled as alienating, it can be extremely damaging, and so it can be extremely damaging in many different regards. One, very simply, it's going to at the least strain your relationship with your children. Now, we've said many times on the show that we talk about all the time, never ever badmouth your ex. Your children identify with take some of their identity from both parents, no matter what you feel or how you feel or what you think about your ex, that they take and draw some of their identity. So when you're bad mouthing the other parent, it is literally harming them. And so when parental alienation is going on, this is incredibly harmful. And then kids don't understand. They don't understand. They're not able to differentiate all this adult stuff that they might be told about one or the other parent. So that's why then that can cause a real significant and challenging or harm with your relationship with your children. The other part of that is it's dangerous in that if this starts to become a narrative that then is brought into court, then this can potentially lead to limited time with your children or change in the parenting time that won't be beneficial to them. So that's why it's absolutely critical. If this starts to happen, or if you start to hear things, and we're going to go through here now next some examples of parental alienation and some signs that might be happening, but it's absolutely critical that you counteract this narrative. And then we're going to talk after these examples on some ideas of what you need to do and what you need to do immediately. And I'll also say that this is where it becomes really critical to have a very good attorney, but also attorneys aren't incredibly good at strategizing around this and how you can mitigate some of this. So that's also helpful, where you might have a divorce coach that is helping you to deal with this and to work through, in conjunction with your attorney, the system in counteracting this and making sure that you are able to keep that strong relationship and continue to have that parenting time with your children. All right, some examples of this is unjustified gatekeeping. An alienating parent can act in ways that result in the child being alienated from the targeted parent. The alienated parent may blame the targeted parent for splitting the family. The alienating parent may remove from the house all photographs and similar mementos related to the targeted parents, or refuse to talk about the targeted parents. That's one of them. The alienating parents may question the children about the targeted parent and express their disapproval about some behavior. That's another one. The alienating parent may exhibit extreme inflexibility with the parenting plan as a pretext to deny the other parent parenting time. That would be, let's see, that's our third one. They could also display extreme sadness every time the child goes, in an effort to make the child feel guilty about leaving them. So as you kind of see here, these are all kind of mental and emotional things that they do by doing and saying things, mostly saying things that are insidious, that kind of plant a seed or some doubt or some worry in a child's mind about the other parent. Now, you can also, here's another part to it as well, is you can see parents actually waging a full-scale campaign of denigration towards the other parent, where the child cannot display positive feelings about the targeted parent because they are constantly being encouraged to express negative feelings. And that would be a parent, if a child says something nice about the parent, and the other parent says something like, "Oh, well, that's stupid," or says something that is negative or denigrating about that parent, so that they can make sure that the child doesn't feel anything that's positive towards the other parent. That would be basically a conscious act of campaign against the parent, against the other parents. This is and so here's the way that you can pick up on that one, though, because this is pretty obvious, especially if there's an active campaign going on. It's the child will parrot or repeat perceived flaws or negative attributes about the targeted parent. So if you start hearing from your kiddo something about like, "Oh, well, if you did that," or, "Oh, well, I don't think that's a very good idea," or this or that, something that you would not probably otherwise hear for a kid, depending upon your age, upon their age, that makes you suspect that, that doesn't really sound like something that they would say. That might be a sign that there's an active campaign going on by the parent to denigrate or not allow them to have the positive feelings around that, especially if they're talking about your behavior. Other things that could be characterized as alienating is one parent's over-involvement in the child's life during the other parent's parenting time. So if you get a parent, and so this one's a tough one to judge depending upon what kind of relationship you have. But if you have a parent that is just insistent on being involved or active, or maybe overly active in handling things during your parenting time, that could be a sign. Another one is parents unnecessarily going over emergency or 911 procedures with children before going over to the targeted parent's house. Another one would be providing the child with different ways to contact them, such as telling the child to contact them at school, or giving the child a secret cell phone so that they can contact them while they're away, but not with or in conjunction with or in agreement with the co-parent. Or the alienating parent can call or text the child excessively on the other parent's time, quote unquote, or quote, just to check in, unquote, even if the child hasn't been over at the targeted parent's house for long. So those are some really specific examples around that. If you've got some of this going on, then pay attention. Pay attention. And let's talk now about how you might be able to show the court that alienation is happening. And so again, this is very, very challenging because it can be covert, and also if a co-parent is aware that you may suspect or worry about this, they can actually make it even more covert than they may or may not otherwise know. Like we said, it's sometimes conscious, sometimes subconscious that that they're doing this. The number one thing that you can do, and do it immediately, is remain open to hearing what the child has to say. And so the intention of the other parent is to undermine and degrade the relationship that you have with your children so that they can turn the children against you, and for whatever sick reason they might have in their mind, feel like they're a better parent, or that the children like them better. So being open to what they have to say is the number one thing, because the number one thing that you want to have in your life is that positive, open, loving relationship with the kids. And so this whole alienation thing is meant to undermine that. So being open to them is absolutely critical. Have the conversations with them. You can ask where, when they're saying the things that you're not quite understanding where they're coming from or why they're saying, you can ask things and have open conversations of, why do you feel that way? Or did you hear that someplace? Or tell me a little bit more of why you feel that way, and try to get to the root of the problem. If you're able to do that active listening with them, oftentimes it's going to really, it will be exposed very quickly. It will come to light that that's not necessarily something that they came up with in their minds, but something that they were hearing from somebody else. And this is a good tool, the active listening tool, but by asking questions and continue asking questions to get answers around that is a fantastic tool with children in general, not just in parental alienation, but in trying to understand and hear what it is a child's feeling and getting to the root of what that might be. Let's see here. The next most important thing to do is to keep a journal of things the child is telling you and how the child appears while telling you. And this is crucial, because what you're needing to do is you're needing to demonstrate that there's a pattern of behavior, so that there's a pattern that they're coming continually with whatever it might be, or whatever the actions might be, that you're able to document all of those examples that we just described, that this continues to happen over and over and over again. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be very easy to demonstrate in court, or that the court's going to really accept it or really even care about it. And we're going to talk about that here at the end. But doing that is absolutely critical. So top two things you can do. One is just listen to your kids. That you want to keep those lines of the communications open, and you want to keep that relationship strong with them. And then just document everything. And documenting, that can be journaling, but that can also be videotaping, that can be recording, that can be, in their own words, because what you're going to want to do, and we're going to talk about here later, is present this information to an expert that will then be able to look at that, disseminate it, and then have conversations with the children or therapists, et cetera, that might help to prove this or disprove it if you're on the other end of it. So what to do before going to court? I would say the first and foremost, the thing, once you start hearing this language that we talked about and listening and maybe having those conversations, is to get your child into some sort of therapy, because a therapist can help the child navigate his or her negative feelings toward the targeted parent and help the child recognize the, quote, real versus imaginary fears. And then the other part of that is, if a child custody expert later becomes involved in the case, the child's therapist will be just an absolute valuable resource for the child custody expert to understand if the child's being alienated and how it is affecting the child. And hey, we talk about it with ourselves and in taking care of our mental and emotional states by being in therapy. And there's only a benefit for the kiddos getting into therapy, especially during this difficult and challenging time of divorce. So even if you don't have parental alienation going on, therapy for the kiddos is really a good thing for them to sort out what's going on through this process. Because just as we're going through all of these mental and emotional issues that are happening through the divorce, and whether that's anger or grief or sadness or whatever it might be, your kiddos are having something going on as well. And so they're going through a process as well. And therapy can really be beneficial for them to do that, because oftentimes it's difficult for us to be there and try to figure this out and understand it with them when we're going through it ourselves and don't really understand or can't quite grasp or are just having a challenge in doing it. So therapy is always a fantastic and positive thing. Now this one might be a little bit counterintuitive, and a targeted parent might want to consider attending therapy or attending a parenting class, because being the targeted parent is stressful, isolating, and may feel like the damaged relationship is too difficult to repair. And going to therapy can help you cope and help you develop parenting strategies. It also may help you discover how to prevent breakdowns in communication with the other parent and help you recognize if you're also participating in poor parenting behaviors. I think this is a great one, because I hear so often, particularly with men who are dads that are being targeted and have parental alienation going on, that the challenge is so great and it is so hard and it is such a battle to stay in this and be fighting for their kiddos, that they literally get beat down to where they give up. And so this falls in line with the taking care of yourself so that you can take care of your kids. You got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of your kiddos. So by getting them therapy or parenting classes that are going to help you develop the skills to deal with your own emotions, or skills to deal with the kids and parenting, that's going to help go a long way in, if you are getting into this battle and you do need to keep fighting for this, that you're going to be taken care of so that you have the strength and you have the foundation of skills in order to go through that. All right, so if you're going to court, or this is going to go to court, whether you're on the receiving end of these allegations or whether you're being targeted as a parent of parental alienation, if it's occurring before the entry of any parenting time orders, you can raise the issue to the court and present it at your permanent orders hearing. Now, this would be for those of you that are in the process of going through the divorce. If you already have a parenting plan, it will be a little bit different, and it might be a little bit of a longer process, because you're going to need to file a post decree motion. And someone with someone dealing with parental alienation files a motion to modify parenting time. So that's likely what it is that you're going to do, is attempt to modify the parenting time based upon this parental alienation. Now, more often than not, a motion to modify will be accompanied by a motion seeking the appointment of a custody expert. Now, these custody experts, at least where I'm from in Colorado and in many states in North America, or in the United States and in a lot of places in North America, those come in the form of a child and family investigator or a parental responsibility evaluator. And the difference between those is that a child and family investigator is, number one, less expensive. And this person's probably not going to have a mental health background, although some of them do have a mental health background. Some of them are, or I would say maybe the majority of them are attorneys. And what they're going to do is they're going to look at and analyze what it is that you're contending is happening. Now, a PRE is much, much more expensive. And to put this in perspective, at least here in Colorado, the child and family investigator is capped at $2,750. A parental responsibility evaluation can cost upwards of $20,000. Now, I've experienced it being somewhere in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. But there's a reason for the difference in costs, and that is because a PRE is a mental health professional, and they have the discretion to conduct mental health evaluations of both the parties involved. And they'll usually meet with the parties and the children more often than a CFI, and the reports are usually much more detailed. They're going to go do home visits. They're going to sit down with children. They're going to talk to friends and family members. They may even talk to teachers in school. They're definitely going to talk to any therapists that the children might be talking to. So, and the process can take months, 5-6 months to go through it, because they're going to basically comb through everything and every part of both lives, both of the independent lives of both parents, and then make an evaluation. So what both experts will analyze the case and make recommendations through the lens of the acceptable standard. And what that means is the acceptable standard is most often the best interest of the child. Now, here's the thing now with getting into court with these, and oftentimes, and most often, they will take the expert's report into consideration when making the ruling. The expert can recommend not just changes to parenting time, but can also recommend therapy and other changes to the parenting plan. So when this report, what they will do is they will issue a report, whether it's a CFI report or a PRE report. What this report will say is it will go through, and it's unbelievably detailed, and it's 60-70 pages long. The PREs are. The CFI reports aren't quite as long, but they will go through all of their investigations, talk about everything that they found, and then they will make the recommendations. And these recommendations, like I said, can be therapy, but they can be much greater than that, depending upon what they find with the parents, or if they do find alienation. So that can be a positive thing, because the court will look at this as an independent person that has made a determination around what is in the best interest of the children going forward, since the parents cannot agree or haven't been able to figure it out on their own. Now, here's a tip or a couple of tips in going through. If you do find yourself in the position that you are having a CFI investigation or a PRE investigation going on, or any kind of investigation for that matter, if you have Child Protective Services for whatever reason coming to talk to you. It's critical to knowing how to communicate with the experts. Now, you want to be clear and concise about your concerns, and you'll at all times want to remain child focused. And what does that mean? That means take the emotions, attempt to take the emotions out of your communication. So you're child focused, you're just strictly focusing on what it is your concerns, what the behaviors are specifically, and not getting emotional about what it is or what's going on with the other parent. Now, your first opportunity to lay out your case is in the initial paperwork to the expert, and you'll want to be as detailed as possible. You may also want to send the expert pictures and text messages for them to review. Again, they're going through everything in specific detail. At the beginning, you're going to have an opportunity to put all this down in writing. Most all of them are going to ask you for some preliminary information so that they can get a good grasp and understanding of the case from both people's perspectives, and they'll ask you to do that in writing. Usually they have a stock form that each one of them will send to you with questions that will help prompt that. So be very clear and very detailed in those. So some experts do not use the word alienation in their work, so you want to be clear about what is happening and how it is affecting the child without overanalyzing or quickly applying labels to the behavior or situation. So that's a really great point. Like I mentioned earlier, not everybody in the court system, some of them don't like the word parental alienation. So coaching is a good one to use, that they're being coached. But again, you want to stay focused on what the behaviors are that you're seeing that make you uncomfortable, and not necessarily attributing any intention behind it, for sure, or attempting to specifically label that as alienation. Lay it out, be very specific, but avoid trying to do any of those things. If you can show parental alienation is occurring and that the alienating parent is detrimentally affecting your relationship with the child, the court can deal with it in a variety of ways. So the court oftentimes will order therapy. And that therapy can be individual therapy, it can be family therapy, it can be reunification therapy, or it can be a combination of all of those therapies. The court might also order, more specifically in the parenting plan, that forbids a parent from denigrating the other and provides specific ways that the parties should communicate with the children. Now, the challenge with this one is it's basically impossible to enforce, because oftentimes it's hearsay, and if one parent is saying that the other parent's saying something, that the only way to get that information is because the children said something, and they're not going to put the children on the stand, and that's got to go through a process of a CFI. So like, I see this all the time in parenting plans, but it's almost worthless, at least in my estimation. Let's see what else here. The court may order these things and not change. Okay, so the court may also order that one or both parties attend parenting classes. And this can be beneficial, especially if you go together and you have a parent that is open to this, or maybe it's a subconscious thing that's been happening with the parent that is alienating. Now, if it's conscious, I would say that the likelihood of success through parenting classes together is probably low, because it's a campaign like we talked about. The court may also order things may order these things and not change the parenting time arrangement, which is why you should try to do as many of these things prior to going to court for help. So that's a really good point too. is if you can figure some of this stuff out, like the therapy or going to parenting classes together, that would be absolutely beneficial, because once you get involved in the court, as you probably already know, it becomes expensive. When you start filing motions, it becomes expensive. When you start going back and forth and arguing about what's happening, it becomes expensive. And not that it's not a worthy expense you have to go through, but if you have an inkling of an opportunity to try to figure this out and work this out with your co-parent in trying to get them into therapy or doing some of these things that we just suggested, that would be absolutely beneficial. Now, another thing is research on this issues suggests that changes in parenting time arrangements in favor of the targeted parent is an effective strategy for improving child-parent relationships and reducing distress in the child. And the court may order that the targeted parent have more parenting time. Now, this may or may not be true. There is some research around this. The challenge is the court may find that the alienated parent is harming the relationship between the child and the targeting parent, but still not change the parenting time schedule. Now, I find that this is more often the case. And it's more, I can't tell you exactly why this is more often the case, except that the courts just want to leave things as much status quo as possible. If there's not something that is so egregious, like physical harm or imminent death going on, that they're not going to do something, and they want to leave things at 50-50 as most of the time and as much as possible. And they may determine that even with the bad behavior, parenting time shouldn't be changed. So, more likely to happen if the alienated parent already has limited time with the child, and the court feels limiting it even more will cause the child becoming even more alienated. So, they're just saying that if there's limited time, they're not going to limit the time even more, even though this parent is alienating, which I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me, but it's not uncommon. So if the alienation is severe enough, the court may first order reunification therapy and step up parenting schedule that slowly gives the targeting parent more and more time with the child for longer stretches. So this seems to be the most common one that I see, that they find some indication of alienation, coaching, gatekeeping going on, and they order reintegration therapy, which is a type of therapy where the children will meet with a therapist with the parent in order to help to facilitate the repair or improvement of the relationship. This seems to be the most often. And then if there is a reduction in parenting time, they'll work as quickly as possible to get that back to something that is more equitable and even with both of the parents. So I would say if you're going through this and you are experiencing this, that this is most likely the outcome if you end up in court. That their best case is that you will find that there is alienation determined, but they want to mitigate that, and they will always give the benefit of the doubt to the alienating parents, provided there's no physical harm or severe abuse, and they will order some kind of reintegration therapy with the children, or maybe even parenting classes with that parent, so that they get a better grasp of what they need to be doing. And this is all fine and dandy, and hopefully it works out, and the parent realizes what they were doing, if this is a subconscious or unconscious way they were doing it. I will say, for those exes that we have that have personality disorders or severe mental emotional issues, it's not going to do a damn thing, because that would require them doing some self-reflection understanding and really buying into the therapy or the parenting classes. And so I would say that at some point, doing this and going to court and trying to prove this, it might be beneficial to focus more specifically on your relationship with the children and ensuring that you do have your time with them so that you can continue to show them that there's a more positive and better environment. And that means that even though you may be alienating, or they may be alienating you, that you still are not speaking badly about them. And now when I say that, is, that doesn't mean that you don't talk about behaviors that you are not comfortable with or behaviors that should not be happening. If a parent's saying something bad or denigrating you, that you can say something like, I'm sorry that they said that, and that's not appropriate for them to do. That's addressing the behavior. It's not addressing who they are. So that is perfectly fine, but do not do the same thing back. It might make you feel better in the moment. It is absolutely not going to do anything for the kids. But by modeling a positive environment where you might have this conversation and make it known that it's not that is not appropriate what the other parent is doing, but by holding a different standard for yourself and creating that positive environment for your children and keeping that relationship strong with them, I promise that they will eventually see and understand that that is a better and more positive way to go. And that might be really, really hard. It's particularly hard, I know, and it has been my experience to have your kid come home and say something totally negative about you. It just breaks your heart. But if you can remember that it's not them saying it to you, and that it is something that they're hearing, and having that conversation with them about that, asking those questions, and have that active listening going on, then eventually as they grow older, I promise you that they're going to see a difference in the two environments. Now, it may not happen for a very long time. And when I'm saying very long time, sometimes it might be that until they get older, because they've been alienated and it was very difficult for you to mitigate, or you didn't have enough time with them, or the other parent was successful for the time being in alienating them, and then they didn't realize it till much older. But they will eventually figure it out. So just try to keep those lines of communication open. So let's wrap it up. If you suspect alienation, it's absolutely important to intervene before the alienating parent and the child become entrenched. So that's when they've converted the kids and have created this completely false narrative about who you are and what you do. But the most frustrating thing is, even after experts and multiple court interventions, the alienating parent refuses to stop the alienating behavior. The court could order supervised parenting time, but that's not a long-term solution. In these severe cases, the most important thing a parent can do is to maintain the relationship with the child, like I said. But unfortunately, that there may be a ton of damage. And it's imperative in keeping the kids in therapy as much as possible so they can work through these feelings. So again, you may want to go the route of court and try to determine this, or you may want to try to fight this on your end and control only what you can control in your lane, in creating the relationship, getting therapy and help for your children. If you look at it from the mindset and the perspective of, I'm going to do everything I can that is going to benefit and help my children's long-term mental and emotional state, then sometimes, and I would even say, it's been my experience that this is even the best route to go, because the probability of success is much higher, in my estimation, than going to court and really trying to determine this. Now, if you're having roadblocks behind getting them in therapy or being able to do parenting classes or having effective communications or even an appropriate amount of parenting time, then maybe you need to do this in court. But again, that becomes a crapshoot, and it's a very expensive crapshoot. But again, lastly, I'll say the benefit of having a good attorney and a good divorce coach can help you mitigate this process, whether that is determining whether or not to go into court, whether to get an expert involved, or to just go it alone and figure out how to create the environment to make this positive in the long run. That can help you immensely. I hope that this was really incredibly helpful to you. To you that are being alienated, I am so sorry. I can relate to this. It is a terrible, awful thing, but please keep up the fight to mitigate this. And as soon as you know about it, change the narrative, get on changing the narrative and figuring out how to mitigate this with your children. They need you, dads. It is absolutely critical. There are few to no other things that are more important in their lives than having you involved and being with them. So keep up the fight. Sometimes this can be strong, this can be difficult, and this can be challenging and heartbreaking and all of those things, but keep up the fight. It's worth it. I promise you. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. If you found some value in talking about parental alienation today, then I would ask you to please share this with somebody else, another divorcing dad. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment, something that would help, or just share this on social media somewhere with somebody else. The show continues to grow and grow. It is a credit to you. I appreciate it. God bless you, and I'll talk to you next week.